And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Phil at the Movies. I'm your host, Phil Walsh, and this is episode number 117 of this ongoing podcast that is for and always for the love of movies. Going to do something a little fun today. I mean, we always do something fun in this show, but today especially, it's 4 months to Halloween. When you're listening to this episode, I didn't do a halfway point to Halloween, but figured now 4 months is even closer than 6 months. So today, let's sort of creep back into spooky season a little bit, and I thought today would be fun to do some rankings. Movie rankings are always a fun time on this show, and I have brought back. This is, I think, his second or third time on the show to talk about his, I think it's fair to say, his favorite horror movie franchise, if not favorite franchise. Now, if I'm putting words in your mouth, stop me there, but I don't think so. I'm going to be talking about Scream. We're going to be ranking all 6 films from our least favorite to our favorite, and I'm sure we're going to have a very exciting discussion and passionate back and forth on the way. But first off, let me welcome back one of the co-hosts from the Never Split Up podcast, Mr. Anthony Dapuzzo. Anthony, welcome back to the show, man.
Oh, thank you for having me back. I had so much fun doing the H2O episode, and I had so much fun having you on for our Halloween ranking, so it's poetic that I get to come on to do the Scream ranking with you.
Again, everything comes full circle. You know, I did Star
Yes.
Wars with Nolan, so now we
Yep.
do Scream. Everything works out. So I'm looking forward to this. Because again, you are a Scream expert, the king, if you will. I mean, I don't want to, put too heavy of a crown on you, but you certainly have cornered the market when it comes to Scream, and I respect that. Before we begin, tell me, what is your Scream story? How did you first discover this franchise? What was the first movie that you saw?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like I think we discussed it in the H2 episode, Halloween was my dad introduced me to Michael Myers, I think when I was 6, and then every time, I'm aging myself, we would go to the video store and we'd rent a movie and I was like, oh, I want to rent Halloween again, rent Halloween. They're like, yo, you rented this like 10 times, like try something different. So my mom's like, let's buy Halloween and let's watch this newer slasher that just came out, Scream. It's like the talk of the town. I'm like, okay. So we rented Scream, and oh my god, I immediately fell in love. And especially, I got to the first one. Halloween is literally in the movie Scream, so I was like mind blown. And Scream's meta and fun, but also terrifying. So I just thought it blended every aspect of a slasher movie and a horror movie perfectly, with the humor, the whodunit, the kills. I love a final girl, and in my opinion, you don't get any better than the final girl of this franchise. So the first one, immediately fell in love. How can you not fall in love with the first movie? That opening scene is, in my opinion, the best opening scene of all time. And it's just a classic Wes Craven
Mhm.
chiller and suspenseful slasher who done it, and I immediately fell in love. So after the first one, I was lucky enough that the second one also just came out. So I rents the second one back to back. Oh, the second one means so much to me. We'll get into it. The ranking, love that so much. And then I actually caught up to it when Scream 3, I had to wait for Scream 3 to release in theaters. And my mom, she's the best mom. She tried to take me multiple times opening weekend to see it, but it kept being sold out. So I had to wait to rent that one, when it came out on VHS back in the day. And then the first Scream movie I did see in the theaters was Scream 4, 2011. So I got to do that. And I've seen every Scream movie since then in theaters, obviously. So this is not only, you were right, this is not only my favorite horror franchise, but it's my favorite franchise in general. I love it so much. Wes Craven's a master, and you don't get much better than the acting and cast throughout these movies and the writing. So I think it's the most consistent horror franchise, not only because of the continuity, just quality wise in general. So I'm excited, very excited.
No, I definitely agree with you. I mean, consistency wise, I mean, you don't get much better than the Scream films. I mean, the fact that we're now on, Scream 6, soon to be Scream 7, and we've yet to have some sort of a break in the timeline. There's been no
Right.
reboots. I mean, it's really remarkable that it's lasted as long as it has. That's another point in its favor for the as a horror franchise. But no, I know Scream is very near and dear to your heart. I know Sydney Prescott is your girl. So like I said, this is going to be a fun discussion, the fun back and forth. disclaimer, everybody, these are just our opinions. So, put down the virtual
Yes.
pitchforks and all of that. It's all in the name of fun and all for the love of movies here. So, without any further ado, I think we can sort of dive right into this, if you will. Put on our ghost face mask and take a trip back to Woodsboro. So, Anthony, start us off. What is your least favorite movie in this series?
Okay, Phil said it. Don't come at me. I know this is so sensitive on Twitter. I love every single movie in this franchise, even though if I'm hard on my last couple spots, it's just because I'm extra hard on screen because it's near and dear to my heart, and I want it to stay the most consistent franchise. So my last place, I started to see a little bit of the cracks where it got a little bit sloppy, but I still love it so much. It's a blast. But my last place, my number 6, is Scream 6. I think it's the weakest Scream movie in the entire franchise, hands down. It's fun, it's fast paced, it's pedal to the metal, New York City, but I also think that it's the sloppiest and it's the most frantic of the franchise. I think the opening scene, I mean, you have Samara Weaving, you have so much potential, and I do think that she was wasted. It's a cool, entertaining opening scene, but it's almost like in every other Scream movie, we're following a central character or a central duo or something, and we're like rooting for them the entire opening. And this one, it just felt cheapened, in my opinion, just to get to the gimmick of unmasking a killer. Like, ooh, ha, we did something different. So you almost didn't get to build up Samara's character. She didn't even get a
Mhm.
chase scene, and you have Samara Weaving, like, use her talents, like, let's get her running, let's get her. Her scream is awesome, but I want to see her fight. I want to see her do something rather than walk out of a restaurant and go into an alley. Um, and then I think obviously it was rushed just because they wanted to get to the unmasking and then have the whole Tony Revolori going playing hot and cold. That part of it really didn't work for me. I like the who gives a fuck about movies and now I see something red. I think those are awesome lines. So it's also my weakest opening scene in the entire franchise. It is entertaining though. That's what I'll give this movie. I think that Sam is a lot better in Scream 6 than Scream 5, so that's a plus. I love Sam Carpenter. I love Melissa Barrera. Her and Jenna Ortega, in my opinion, are why Scream 5 and 6 work as much as they do. So I think their relationship is great, but I also think that it's almost like, in my opinion, I'm gonna get heat for this. Whereas Sydney Prescott, it almost felt like her progression to like the ultimate final girl was like she felt like a real person, like it was a natural progression. Whereas Sam, it's like almost like written in the script. Okay, Sam, badass now. It's not like, to me, it didn't feel like she naturally progressed. That's almost like, okay, now it's time for Sam to be a badass. Let's go. So
Mm.
to me, it was a little stopping. My big issue with Stream 6, it's not the performances. I think Melissa Barrera was great. I think everyone was great, minus Tony Revolori. I think he was a little, well, bad. But I think my issue with Scream 6 is the script mostly. Like, I don't think that they took advantage of New York as much as they should. I don't think they took
Mm.
advantage of Halloween as much as they should have. They made a big deal. We have the one scene in the subway, but I went to like multiple Ghostface, like running down the streets and the alleys where you don't know which one's the real Ghostface, and they're stabbing and killing. I know we had that a little bit on the subway, but we knew the whole time who the real Ghostface was, the way he tilted his head up. I don't think they took any risks. In Scream 2, we lost Randy and we thought we lost Dewey. In Scream
Mm.
6, Chad gets stabbed 45,000 times and he makes it out. And I love Chad. I'm happy he's, was quote unquote trying to be the new Dewey, but I mean, come on. And Mindy would have had an all timer iconic death scene, but they cheapened out on that as well. And that's an example right there. Like, we're doing spoilers, guys. We know who the Ghostface killers are. But Ethan on the subway, at that point in the movie, every other character is not in the subway. So the only reason that Ethan saved Mindy was for the writers to trick the audience. Like, in the reality of the movie, there was no need for him to. It makes like he did it for the audience to confuse us. Because in reality, like, no one's around. He could have just left her on the subway and left. The only reason they did that is to trick us one more time, which makes absolutely no sense because there's no one. It's not like Sam was on the train. He's like, oh, I got to cover up one more time for Sam. It's like nobody was on the train except for him and Mindy at that point. So it's sloppy writing like that. That Kevin and Wes like never let slip. They always
Mm.
cover their bases. And I'm not. I am a Sidney Prescott guy, so some people might think I'm biased, but I honestly I was rooting. I'm like pro Nev, like get your pay girl. But at the end of the day, with how sloppy it was, I didn't want them to throw her in for a 5 minute cameo. If Sidney Prescott's in a Scream movie, I want her to be a part of the whole story and a co-lead. That's one of my issues with five as well, that she's in it, but she's not in it as much as she should be. So I think that I had a feeling that if they threw her in six, she probably would have just came in the finale, like after Gale's attack, and like just probably went to the shrine in the finale. But it is a bummer that we don't get to see Sydney in the shrine because it's literally her life. And Gale Weathers, love her so much. She has the best sequence in the entire movie, hands down, in my opinion, one of the all-timer scenes of the franchise. But other than that one scene, I do think that she's wasted. I don't think they do enough with her character, and I think the way they have her revert back to Scream One Gale a little bit is kind of a slap in the face to how she progressed in five and how she ended up. I get, I did the work and I was like, okay, maybe because she doesn't have Dewey around and Sydney around, she like reverted back to her bitchy self-reporter. But I had to do the work. Like it's not like the writing or the movie showed me that. I did it, made that a reality up in my head. So I did the work for it. And outside of her chasing, she's kind of just like, okay, we have to have a legacy character back. We don't have Sydney, so let's have Gale. So always fun to see Kirby. Loved her. I did not like that she was the red herring. I thought that was kind of stupid, but I love seeing Hayden, so that's awesome. And in my opinion, it's the weakest killer in the entire franchise. Dermot Mulroney, whew, that performance in the finale was rough. It turned into not the Mrs. Loomis kind of camp that I love. It was just downright bad and horrible, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, fun Scream movie. Doesn't take any risks and doesn't take advantage of being the pedal to the metal New York Scream movie. But it's fun, but it is very sloppy. So sorry, Twitter, young Scream fans, but Scream 6 is firmly in my last place.
Well, I will save my thoughts for Scream Six for a little bit, but I can't argue with much of what you said there because it is a script that feels like it needed another pass through, maybe a second. It's
Yes.
the elements are there, and I think Sam's character is the strongest in that entire film. But again, you make a good point. There's never a moment where it feels earned necessarily. Like
Right.
you look at Sydney, or you look, at Laurie Strode. Like there's always a moment where the character sort of rises to the occasion. And it's like, it's one thing when it happens organically, but when it's sort of like, well, we have to do it because, well, we're at the, hour 20 mark or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
And yeah, it's kind of interesting too. This is, much like the Friday the 13th movie. New York is completely wasted again. Like, I mean, I know that one, there
Yep.
was like budget issues and script,
Right.
was whatnot. But again, it's like, you're going to be in New York. You're going to have all these settings. Like, how do you not go to the Empire State Building or like like just play into the iconography of New York a little bit, just to, then Halloween. I mean, come on.
100%. 100%. I agree. And even like, to me, the whole like Mindy speech, the franchise speech, like cool, like we're in six movies, so now it's a franchise. That's the theme. But the argument she makes no sense to me because she's like, the main characters have to die so their franchise can go on. But the example she give for like Laurie Strode, I'm like, Laurie Strode died in Resurrection. They immediately had to go back to Laurie Strode, like immediately. Nancy Thompson and Nightmare on Elm
Look how that
Street, the
worked out.
best movies are the ones with her in it. Luke Skywalker, people have their rituals on how like Han and Luke went out, and Ellen Ripley, she also got brought back in Resurrection immediately because everyone hated that she died in three. So like I feel like that was kind of a jab, like, we don't need our leading lady, but clearly all the examples you gave showed us they didn't work in these other franchises. So it's a little bit like do your research a little bit. But it was, it's a fun movie. It's fun.
No, I agree. It is a fun film. And I will say this, and I know I will get flack. Radio Silence, God love him, but they are no Wes Craven. I mean, like,
Yeah,
I know some people may be like, oh, come on now, to each his own. But like, to me, Wes Craven is so
100%.
indelible with the Scream films that like you feel his absence. I mean, certainly John Carpenter, to sort of make the comparison to Halloween. He's there in that original film, but there's been such a sort of a succession, if you will, with different writers and different directors, and it's never been one same person necessarily, unless we're going to uh, the Blumhouse trilogy. But like
Right.
Wes Craven, like he is Scream, like this was his baby, and I just feel his signature is missing on these last two films. So I'll be
Yeah. I almost feel like it was them trying to blend their vibe with Wes. At this point, I'm just like, go full radio silence. Like, go,
Yeah.
do your Ready or Not slash Abigail vibes. Like, don't try to do both because I feel like they kind of met in the middle, and like, that's why it's a little bit sloppy for me. So if they just went pedal to the metal radio silence, we could have had this weird two spin off, kind of, they are 5 and 6 now. And look, at the end of the day, they are kind of their little, Sam saga. So they could have done their own thing. And now, which is why I'm really thankful that someone who lives and breathes Scream, Kevin Williamson, will be at the helm of
Mm.
Seven. So that's where I have my hope. But yeah, I agree. It's just, they're no Wes Craven, which is not a
No.
dig because
No,
no
no,
one's Wes
no.
Craven and no one's John Carpenter. Like, there's
Yeah.
only the two greats. But yeah, I agree 100%.
No, definitely.
What's your number six?
Yeah, so all right, so this will probably be a little controversial, and frankly, I went back and forth on these two, but there's just so much with this film that I can't overlook it. The bottom for me, my number six is Scream Five, and
Okay.
this movie, it's a great reinvention, but it plays it too safe. And I mean, I'll just start right off the bat. It does the unthinkable. It kills Dewey. And like I'm not opposed to killing a main character, but you've got to have a death like that mean something. And I'm not saying that there wasn't some significance. Yes, he was able to get Sam and Tara to safety, but like come on, if you're gonna take Dewey down, he's got to go out guns blazing. He's got to go down saving Gail, Sydney. Like it's got to be in the third act, like 5 minutes to go. Like Dewey pulls a Dr. Loomis or something, and sacrifices himself. And I just thought it felt like almost like the Han Solo moment. Like, okay, well, we have to kill somebody off. We got to have that shock value. And oh, Dewey's a fan favorite, so kill him off. Um, to me, while I like that it sort of gets back to the roots. We're going back to Woodsboro again, which is always nice. And I love the connection with Billy Loomis. I thought that was a really clever twist on the final girl to sort of have her with that connection to the original killer, then him kind of talking to her, or whatever's going on, hallucinations or something. That was, I thought, very clever. But to me, this is one of those weird films where it's a legacy sequel and it's a requel, whatever you want to call it, reboot. But to me, I think Scream 4 actually accomplished everything that this film wanted to do 11 years earlier. It was a legacy sequel. It had a next generation cast and story, and it was able to finesse everything perfectly. Um, you mentioned it earlier about Sydney. She's really wasted in this film. Like in the way the marketing was built up, you thought, okay, this is going to be the Laurie Strode, Michael Myers moment, and like I said, the story kind of could have gone on without Sydney in this film. It was all right. Well, she's there because she has to be, and she gives her line about "I'm a survivor" or "I always do," but like there was never a moment where I thought there was a genuine baton pass. Like to sort of compare it to the Halloween trilogy, like those are Laurie's movies. Yes, Allison is a part of them, but they made a conscious decision to not have the knife, if you will, pass. Like Laurie is the central focus in all three of those films, and I think in this film with Scream Five, they should have either followed that route and been like, okay, we're going to make Sydney the Laurie character in a way, or we need to make her pass the baton. And I think they accomplished pretty much none of those aspects. I mean, on the plus side, I love Sam, I love Tara, I love the new cast, Mindy and Chad, but it it plays it too safe, and then it just sort of overkills with the death of Dewey. No pun intended, but it's a fine film. Like I'm not like gonna go write a blog about how it destroyed my faith in the franchise, but like it's an okay film. I was sort of mixed on it when I saw it back in 2022, and it's one of those films where I will probably at best watch it once a year during spooky season. But even then, it's almost becoming like a background noise movie, and it kind of feels strange to say that about a Scream film. Like, oh, I'll just pop that on while I'm doing some work or whatnot. But I don't know. This one, I think there was so much potential. They just they missed the mark. And I think, like what you said earlier with Scream 6, there is sort of that blending of the tones, if you will, where, Radio Silence has their own unique, aesthetic, and then there's Wes Craven, and like you kind of have to commit to one. You can't be like, well, we'll just make a hybrid, because then it's like, well, what's the identity? What are we going for here? So yeah, again, it's a fine film, but it's bottom of the barrel for me. This is one that again, not that I would, again, write a blog about it, but it's just
Right.
it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, yeah, I hear you on that. 100%, I hear your points. So I'll just get into it. My number five is Scream Five as well, or
All
not.
right.
My number five is Scream Five. So my Radio Silence movies are my bottom
All
two.
together.
But I am higher on it than you. I do love this movie. I think that structure wise, it's better than six. I think it's more about focused on the story rather than the gimmicks. So I do think they have a through line of the Sam and Tara relationship, with the legacy, bring them back. Although I do agree, like, you're gonna have Nev Campbell in your movie. Have her fucking in your movie for the whole, bring her back. I get why when they did it after Dewey's death. And as far as Dewey goes, I'm not someone who thinks that you had to kill. I know we're doing a requel, so as in Amber's, Dewey had to die because our movie has fucking stakes. But it was almost expected going into Scream 5 that one of them was going to go, and it was pretty much guaranteed to be Dewey because he's the death that would affect Sydney and Gail the most. He's Sydney's pretty much brother, surrogate brother, and he's Gail's best friend, love of her life. So we knew if someone was going to die, that would make the most sense for those two characters to have them move forward. And I love Dewey. He's one of my favorite characters, but I agree. I think that maybe you go into the requel saying, "Oh, Dewey's gonna die," and then you save him to kill off in six to like throw them up. You know what I mean? I think he deserved more than one movie. And if you had to kill him off in five, I love that in the hospital scene he saved Tara, Sam's sister, like he wasn't able to save his own sister Tatum. Love it. Chef's kiss, that's beautiful. But I would have had him survive that because we didn't get a scene. I know I love Sydney and Dewey's phone call in the beginning. It's so good. I get tears every time we get the Gail and Dewey scene. Their conversation is A plus, the best acting, some of the best acting of David Arquette's career. This is probably his best acting as Dewey, I would say. But we didn't get them all three on screen together, and that bothers me. That really bothers me. And I think that Dewey deserved to make it back to Stu's house because he was there in the original, and I think that it would have really got to me. I would have like been a sobbing mess, but it would have felt even more earned if he died. I would actually prefer, I would say Sydney or Gale, but I think it would really, really be beautiful if he died saving Sydney because that's the one he was always going to look out for in Scream, Scream 2, Scream 3, Scream. Like he always was going to make sure Sydney was okay. So I think that that would have been pretty poetic if he died saving Sydney and then Gail and Sydney just fucking rocked whoever it was, Amber out right after that, just like, and grieve together. But I really do love the scene when, Sydney embraces Gail when she comes to the hospital because we obviously know where they started in Scream 1 and to see where they are now, their relationship, I think that's beautiful. And you can't really say that about many horror franchises, the evolution of these relationships. I don't think any other franchise does it like Scream. So I think that's beautiful. I do wish that Ghostface maybe called Sydney after he killed Dewey just to see her reaction because she was being tough for Gail in that moment. So we didn't really get to see Sydney's raw reaction. And it's always fun having another Ghostface Sydney call. So that would have been a pretty brutal call, like, him notifying her of Dewey's death. Um, I think the opening scene gets back to the terrifying bloody basics because again I do have some issues with four's opening. It's a little hokey. So I thought that Jenna Ortega just she's the star of the first half of this movie, so she steals every scene she's in. I think her and David Arquette are probably the MVPs. Yeah, I agree with you. Some of it's a little sloppy. I mean, it's not the movie's fault, but it was shot during COVID, and
Hmm.
you could tell it was on a set. Stu's house is clearly a set, and I think it's funny because in Scream 3 they have the recreation of that. It's a set, it's supposed to be a set in the movie, but in the movie it looks more realistic than it does in Scream 5. In Scream 5, you're supposed to actually be there, so like stuff like that. And again, I think Radio Silence, we're playing it safe because like, okay, this is the movie we're paying respect to Wes. But again, pedal to the metal. Like, let's put your own twist on it, and you can still pay respect and do your own thing. That's where I think the writing comes in. It's pretty like the writing's subpar for me in 5 and 6. I really think it is. Down to the thing where like if you're gonna make a Scream movie, like you're making a big slasher movie that's part of one of the two most iconic franchises. Like do your homework. Like the scene when I forget who said Sydney was in all the stab movies but the last one. We know that's not true because in Scream 4 we find out that she threatened to sue if they were going to have her in any movie after Stab 3. And that's me being my like hardcore Scream fan, but that bothers me because you're messing with my continuity. It's like, you're making a movie. Do your homework. That's so little. Wes would never let that fly. Ever. So stuff like that bothers me, but all in all, I do think it was a great return to the franchise, bringing it back. Again, the killers, they're fun, they're fine, but they're nowhere near my top killers. They are better than the Scream 6 killers, I think. And I think I hate the scene when Ghostface comes behind Mindy. To me, it's more parody than like what they did with Randy. I just think some of the nods went a little too far. Um, it's almost like she's watching that stupid ripoff, whatever stab they have on the TV. And it's just a little too hokey. I didn't fall in love with Mindy or Chad right away. I think they were kind of like Chad was kind of a throwaway character for me in 5. I think he did get his redemption in 6. I really did like him in 6 a lot more than 5. But Mindy, I'm always hit or miss on, but she was fine. She was better in 5 than in 6 for me, I think. Yeah, I like the new cast. Jenna, and Melissa are awesome. I didn't love Melissa until the finale. I thought she did what she could do with the writing that was given to her. Again, not her fault. It's just some of the writing, like the lines she had to deliver, were kind of like woof. Like when she was delivering her, like story how she found out that Billy Loomis was her dad. It's like, oh, they're really not setting her up for success in some of the dialogue. But yeah, so it's fun. I think the Wes and Judy scene are one of the better set pieces of the movie. Their death sequence and the finale is just fun girl power, like final girl badass. Let's kill these dumbass killers. I love Gail and Sydney teaming up to kill Amber. I love that Gail was actually an active part of the finale, so that's awesome. So yeah, love Scream 5 so much. It's just still it doesn't touch the West movies, but I do love it so much, and I do think the movie does come to life a little bit more when Nev, comes back. You're like, yes, this is like we need the return of the OG. I love my favorite shot in that movie is when she walks in the house and we do that zoom up shot of her.
Mhm.
My favorite shot in the entire movie. But yeah, it's good, and I do think that it did hand off it pretty successfully to Sam and Tara. We thought we were getting supposedly the trilogy, but I do think they handed off to them pretty well to take on Scream 6, and we were gonna like the OG fans would be okay with them being the leads, with the legacy being like, well, I wish they would be the co-lead, but they really ended up being like background characters, which is not okay with me. But that's another thing. I think that Wes is better with balancing a huge ensemble than Radio Silence, because these movies have a lot of characters and it is hard. But I don't think Silence like knew how to balance the legacy and the new cast as good as say Wes did in Scream 4. We thought the baton was getting passed over. The whole trick of that movie, obviously, it's not. It's about the OG, but I do think like Emma Roberts and Hayden were balanced way better than Mindy and Chad and Sam and Tara. You know, in 5, it wasn't as good. But yeah, I love Scream 5 so much. I'm happy that we have Scream 5 because it's the reason why we're gonna have a new set of 3 films already. Wow. So yeah, so happy that we have the requel. But yeah, I agree. It's nowhere near top tier for the franchise, but I do love it so much.
No, I pretty much will co-sign that again because it is the reason we are getting more films, and
Yeah.
it is again it's sort of this era that we're living in where horror films are back on top. I mean, they're always in style, but it seems like we're living through a real special moment. So that's always a plus for me. Um, my next one. These again. There's been a lot of shifting of the list
I'm
lately,
nervous. I think
so
I know what it is.
yeah, there's always a lot of shifting of the list, but number 5 for me, and this movie I was actually much higher on when I first saw it, and for the first number of it feels like it's been like years, but it's only been recent, so that probably gives it away. Everybody, Scream 6, that is
Okay,
number
cool.
5 for me. And again, if you would ask me this probably 6 months ago, it would have been much lower, higher, depending on your philosophical bent. Um, it's a fun movie. I like it better than 5. I like that we are in New York, even though it is underutilized. I like when the sort of Scream feels bigger because it's one of those franchises where you can leave the little town. I mean, Friday the 13th, you're always going to be on Crystal Lake, more or less, with the
Right.
exception of a few of them. Haddonfield is Michael's home, but Ghostface can be anywhere. And I like that. And going to New York just made sense after the events of the first or after the fifth film. Sam is the MVP for me in this film. She comes into her own. She is set up in such a great way, even though I do agree with you. I think there could have been more of that, like, all right, let's organically get to the point where she becomes, Laurie Strode or
Right.
Nancy Tompkins. I mean, again, not saying she has to be carbon copies of these characters, but I mean, when you're playing with the genre, when you're playing with the tropes, you kind of want those moments where kind of everything feels ultimately earned. But there's enough moments in here that I can overlook that because it is such a great performance. That scene she has at the kitchen table where it really is Melissa Barrera pouring her heart and soul into it, because that a lot of that was stemming from real life sort of
Right.
reactions and negativity to her.
Love that scene, by the
Yeah,
way.
it's such a great moment, and it's, again, it's perfect for Scream because it has that kind of instant meta vibe where it's sort of offering a commentary on what's going on in the real world. Yeah, I love the brutality of Ghostface in this film, even though I do think the killers are kind of lackluster. I mean, Mrs. Loomis. I don't even remember his name. Is it Bailey or whatever? The
Yeah,
the the
Detective Bailey.
the detective. You're like, he's just, once the mask comes off, it's like, okay, like, go, tone it down. We're not having a ham dinner here. But yeah, I love the aged mask. I think that was a really cool aesthetic, and just sort of playing into the whole history of the franchise. I mean, you're right. This is the one where it sort of feels like it's part of this larger narrative, or it's part of this, it's entered the big leagues, if you will. It's in the same
Right.
mold as Michael and Freddie and Jason. So there's definitely a lot to like here. I There is sort of I don't want to call it like chess pieces on a board, but things just sort of happen. Like, okay, we go from one setting, we go to this setting where, all right, now they're having a chase down the street. Now we're going to the bodega. Like, there's just sort of so much happening, and it's not organic enough. It just sort of is like, well, we have to have different set pieces and moments. Oh, well, that'll be cool. I mean, like, the
Right.
scene with the ladder across the windows, that I think is really well done, and that's probably the most genuine moment of like pure suspense and terror in that movie, because when Anya falls to her, it's Anya, right?
Annika.
Annika, there we go. I don't know why I thought Anya, but so again, showed you this movie just like going way over
Yeah.
there. Like that was generally suspenseful, and I thought really well done. It did kind of have a Wes Craven vibe to it, which I did appreciate. But yeah, there is moments where this film feels like an inferior Scream too. Just like, again, all right, we're going to have the family members who are angry and want to go after the heroine. Like, it's there's a lot of too many copy and paste moments here. And yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with what you said that I agree with, there are no stakes in this film. Like, we've established that Sam is going to rise above her inner demons, and that's perfect. I think that's a great story. But like, there is never a moment in this film where I felt like, okay, Tara could die, or Mindy could die, or Chad could die.
Right.
Like, there are no stakes
Well, they
whatsoever,
could
and
have, but they just took it. They reversed it. Right.
that's the
Right.
thing. They played it again. I mean, I said they played it safe in the last film, and they probably went overboard on this one. Like, I get it. You fall in love with these characters. Nobody wants to get axed, but it's like, you're in a slasher movie. Somebody has to,
Right.
unfortunately, bite the dust, and that was, I think, the biggest thing with me. And just also, like, there's some sloppiness. Like, okay, you have Gail, but we're not going to really show her doing any little investigative work. Like,
Why do we not see her finding the shrine? Like that would
that's what
have
I'm
been a
saying.
great get. Like it's like, oh,
It's
come
just
on.
that's a waste. That's a complete waste. The fact that we don't see her again, like, oh, she's fine, like, just a
Right.
throwaway line. Like, I'm sorry, like, just show some respect
She
to a
and
legacy
Danny
character.
delivers it. Like that's who you're gonna have deliver that. Gail Weathers, the person who's been in every single movie with this random boy. Like, come on, come
No,
on.
it's
Oh,
it's it's
that
it's
makes me so
ridiculous.
mad. Go to the
No,
hospital. I want to see her. I want to see
yeah,
her alive.
like, it wouldn't have hurt them to do a scene like with
Ugh.
Mindy at the hospital. Like, again, the way the film
Right.
ends with Sam dropping
Love
the
it. Right.
mask, and now, I mean, given the way things have gone
Means
with Scream
so much
7,
more.
it works 10 times better. But yeah, there's just a lot of moments in the film where it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Sometimes, like, again, I think when I saw this film, I was very happy with it because it was better than my reaction to Scream 5. But
Right.
upon several rewatches, there were a lot of noticeable cracks in the mask, so to speak, in this film. And like, okay, yeah, because okay, it's a horror film. Like, we're not talking Shakespeare here, folks, but like, it's there are moments where like, okay, this could have used another polish with the script. There are some choices that are just completely out of left field. Again, just like, all right, we're gonna go with the family member route. Like, I mean, not that I'm like a fan of saying bring Stu back, but like
Oh
that would have felt more
no.
warranted in this film than like, okay, we're gonna go with the angry dad. It's not the mom, but it's the angry dad. So it's like, I
Right.
I don't know. It's just such a bizarre kind of a situation where it's again, I like the film, but there were so many nitpicks and issues with it that it's really hard to overlook
Yeah, this is no Scream 2, baby. I'll tell you right now. It's
it.
just, I'll address like 100% co-sign. I'm happy we're kind of like flip flopped in our last two spots. So we had this same two last spots. But I'll just address a few things and then we can move on so Gen Z doesn't kill me over Scream 6. But I would say as far as finding out Gail was alive, like I know I was actually guest on Ryan C. Showers' podcast, and I talked about this. The episode didn't come out yet, but to find out Gail's alive, like let's cut to the hospital, and if Nev they didn't want to pay Nev enough to have like 10 minutes in the movie, have her come on screen for 30 seconds, and when Gail wakes up, Sydney's sitting beside her bed holding her hand. Like that would have like oh. That would have been beautiful, and then you had to pay Nev for a couple hours of work. You know what I mean? Or if she didn't want Nev to come back, have her wake up, and you see the phone's ringing and it's Sydney. Just like something like that. Like that would have been something powerful to me. Like kind of like how Linda Blair came back for like a 2 second cameo in Believer, Exorcist Believer. That movie has a lot of problems that disappoint me, but that scene actually really worked for me. So something like that. Like I don't want to find out from Danny that like the OG, one of the OGs is alive from Danny, and it's just like him saying, "Oh, Gail's gonna be okay." Like what? Let me see her. Hate that. So sloppy. I really and as, to go back to the finale one more time, when I love the line when Sam delivers to Quinn, like looks like you're down another brother.
Oh, that was a great.
Perfect, perfect. But after she shoots Quinn and Bailey's there, like Sam's like, I always got to shoot him in the head, and she's out of bullets. So obviously, but Bailey's not. And not that I want Sam to die because I don't, but it's so cringy when they run towards each other because I'm like, dude, just fucking shoot her. Like, or at least like they could have had him shown up and he had no bullets. Like something that is so stupid, that scene. And then the scene that follows it is this is where the writing, and this is not Melissa Breyer, this is all the writing. You have your sister who killed Ethan, not really, but she did, for better, one last scare Ethan, but whatever. But she's stabbed in the back and stomach. So like Bailey's after they fall, like I would assume Bailey got knocked out because Sam had time to go put on the ghost face mask and they're like she put on the costume, so she's playing with them. But you have Kirby who you literally ripped the knife out of her stomach to use, bleeding out, and Tara, like, is your sister okay? But you're playing dress up, like just to when you could have subdued him and shot him in the leg with his gun, or like you could have done something because he was not a threat anymore. Like you're out of danger. So, but you want to play dress up when you have your sister and the person who you could be responsible for their death now just bleeding out. And even after she kills Bailey, it's still like her and Tara sitting there. I'm like, yo, go find Kirby. You fucking yanked a knife out of her. Like, what are you doing? And that's like where Scream 1, like Sydney puts on the gown, but she does it when Billy and Stu are focused on Gail. She does it because she's still in danger. She gets her dad to safety. She knows that she hit her dad. And she's putting on the mask and ghost face because she's trying to get one up on them and defeat them, whereas Bailey's already defeated. So you know what I mean? That's where it's like it makes no sense for Sam to do that rather than have the boss girl bitch moment that the writing wants us to be like, yeah, Sam, it's not natural. So it's like, it's so sloppy. So, I love Sam being a badass, but like in the reality of the movie, I'm like, Sam, like you're fucking up. Your sister could be dying and Kirby could be dying and you could be responsible for it because you yanked that knife out of her. So it's kind of like Bailey was already subdued. I get we wanted to see Bailey die, and of course I do, but like, maybe you could have had it where all of them came back the three of them or something, or because she just straight up committed murder at the end. She wasn't fighting for her life at the end right there. She just literally committed murder, and then a scene later dropped the mask and said, "I'm not a murderer." Like, move on. And again, I love that scene because especially now she walks off into the sunrise with Tara, but this is where the sloppiness of Scream 6 comes in. It makes no sense, some scenes. So we can move on. But yeah, I
No,
gotta
yeah,
say,
no, that scene with her at the end was like, okay, I think you got him. Like,
right,
okay, you're
right,
clearly Billy's daughter here. I mean, like, it was. I mean, yeah, I get it's a slasher, but it was like, okay, I think once was enough.
right. And it's a slasher, but it's a Scream slasher, like Scream's
Well,
quality.
that's
So
the
let's
thing.
keep the
Yeah.
quality. We're not Friday. Not I love Friday
No,
13th.
we're
I
not.
love it,
This
and no
isn't
offense to
Jason.
people who that's their
Yeah.
favorite franchise, but Scream is about quality and quality writing and like things that make sense. So yeah, a little sloppy.
Yeah, just a little bit.
All
So
right,
what
so we're at number four.
number four? So
Yeah, so far this is pretty predictable for me. My number four is Scream Four.
uh, okay.
Yes,
I'll,
it
I'll be
is Scream
I'll be
Four.
quiet.
I know you're gonna have a lot to say. I remember when I saw Scream 4 opening night, I was so hyped. I was so hyped. And I loved it, but it did take me a few years to absolutely fall in love with it. It had to grow on me, and I do think that's to the credit of Wes and Kevin, and Aaron, who ended up stepping in as a writer as well. I think this Scream movie aged so well, like down to the mode of obviously like social media and like who needs friends, I need fans. I just want to be famous. Like what a like see all these TikTokers and shit now. Clearly, like Jill Roberts is this is all Jill Roberts. It's happening, and this movie's already gonna be like 14 years old next year. Like what I mean. So it's still relevant, and it aged so well. So I love Jill, love the motive. I obviously love the whole theme of. I love how Wes introduced us. Like this was gonna be the baton passing. You
Yeah.
know, Sydney's handing it off to Jill, like her niece. She's going to take over the franchise. But I love Wes so much. Now he's like, no, no, no. This is Sydney's franchise. Don't fuck with the original. This is my life. This is mine. So I obviously love that whole commentary. I mean, as someone who's a Sydney and OG fan, of course I love it. Forget the first rule remakes. Don't fuck with the original. Don't fuck with Sydney. Love that so much. And I really do love the movie. I do think Dewey does not have enough to do. I think he's kind of a little wasted in Scream 4. We
Mm.
don't see him enough. I think the opening scene is fun and awesome, but again, it has not as bad as Scream 6, but it has the issue where, we get the movie within a movie, which is really fun. We get the nice cameos, which I love. But by the time we get to a real opening, I have no time to connect with these characters. So when they're dying, I'm like, okay, they're dying. Whatever, is what it is. So again, it's my not my favorite opening. And Gail has a great, Gail gets all these great set pieces. I love her. I love the Stabathon so much. Love it, love
Mm.
it, love it. I would go to that in a heartbeat. Can we do that? But I think Gail's sequence in that is awesome. And, guess what? We get to see Gail in the hospital after she's stabbed, and we get to follow up with her. And she's the one who comes to the realization that Jill is the killer to Dewey. Like, oh, how did she know that I was stabbed in the shoulder too? So good. But there's just a few moments in this movie that go full on scary movie, and Scream is so good with balancing it. If that's what Scream's known for. But like, I just can never get over the fuck Bruce Willis. I hate it. I hate it so much. I know people are like this. Come on, but it's so stupid. I don't mind. I like the stab in the forehead, but like, fuck Bruce Willis. You're ruining the whole darkness of that scene. I hate it so much, and I do think the character of Rebecca is a little too she's a wannabe Gale, but it's like again another parody. Like I love Allison Brie, but I just that Rebecca character is pretty cringe. Down to like the music beats, it feels like a cartoon. And some of the beats when she's like in the scenes with Gale, it's like oh, it's so bad. And I think her death scene, like I wanted a parking garage, like iconic chase death scene. I do think that's kind of a wasted set piece as well. I feel like they put all the money into throwing her off of the tippy top in that scene to just have her crash on the van instead of having an iconic chase scene. What else? I do think that again in the finale, after the Stabathon when they're at the house watching a movie, I do think it's almost like very rehearsed. Like there's a moment when Jill's like, oh, I didn't lose my phone. You have my phone. You took my phone. Where is it? And she kind of just like walks out of camera focus, but it's almost like it's like, all right, Emma Roberts exit stage, where it just doesn't feel as natural as like, the finale and the OG. It feels very rehearsed. But other than that, this movie is so good. It aged so well for me. It's actually when Scream 5 came out, I had it higher than Scream 4, but no, Scream 4 is just the better movie, hands down. I love it so much, and I think it's so beautiful that this ended up. I wish Wes was still here, but the fact that his last movie was a Scream movie that he directed, there's no other way to do it. And this movie really grew on me. Again, I love Nev, love Courtney Cox in this. We get introduced to Judy. We didn't talk about her, but she's in, obviously she comes back in 5. We get introduced to that quirky character. Olivia's death might be the most brutal of the entire franchise. And I love the phone call after her death with Sydney when Ghostface is mean in his phone calls in this movie. And I love
Mm.
that. I love when he tells Sydney, like, I'm gonna slit your eyelids in half so you don't blink when I stab you in the face. I'm like, holy shit, that is some dark stuff right there. I love it so much. But yeah, the Olivia death scene is awesome, and this movie's awesome now. I love it so much. It's just it has, in my opinion, those little problems that make it a tiny bit sloppy and too scary movie-ish. But yeah, love it so much. Who doesn't love Jill Roberts, Emma Roberts kicking the shit out of herself?
I mean that whole scene right there. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, they're actually doing it! They're gonna go for it." Good for them, honestly.
Yep.
I'll hold my Scream for comments because well,
Yeah, we're gonna get into it again. We will
I have
get there.
more to say,
All right, cool.
yeah, that's fine. So number 4 for me is actually Scream 3,
Okay.
and this was one where, like I said, probably 6 months ago, it might have been like it might have swapped with 5 and with 6 and yeah with number 6. But this is one of those films where there are problems with it for me. Like there is a change in the tone where I don't want to say because it's like easy to say, oh, it has like a Friends vibe because of Courtney Cox and
Right,
and
right.
and whatnot. But there is a little bit of a dip in quality from 2 to 3 for me. Like 2 is so perfect in just the way that it's orchestrated. There's never a moment where the pacing feels off. And this film, it kind of feels like there were ideas, but then they weren't entirely sure how to finesse them. Um, Again, talk about a film that has certainly aged in a really significant way. I mean, just with the Me Too era and sort of what has come to light with Hollywood and whatnot. I mean, this film was very prescient, and certainly Wes Craven was sort of tipping his hat
He's such
and
an awesome dude.
yeah,
He's the
seriously,
nephew to the Weinsteins, and he's working on
honestly,
making this movie.
seriously, I mean, again, major respect for him with what he did with this film because, I mean, in this movie, like, yes, you have Roman and you have Ghostface, but it's clear who the real villain is of this film, and
Oh
that
yeah.
is more frightening than a guy in a mask running around to trying to kill you. The stuff with Sydney and her mother and the sort of the whole past coming back to bite you. I think that was really well done. It plays nicely into the elements of a trilogy, and certainly, again, I'll have more to say when I get to 4. But like, for what was the original 3, it's a nice capper. It ties everything together. I'm not as sold on the whole Roman long lost brother storyline. I mean, I know
Okay.
for many people, like, oh, that's like he's the OG, he's the best Ghostface. To me, that's where it feels a little too on the nose. Whereas, like, again, I have no issues like when they made Michael Laurie's brother. Like, all right, that's fine. I prefer it if Michael's the just the random boogeyman. But like, all right, I could buy it for that film. But like that was a one and done. But like by the time this movie comes out, there's been so many movies where it's some long lost relative or the mother did it or something, and it just felt a little too on the nose that okay, we're going to have the long lost brother that she didn't know about be the orchestrator of this whole event. It felt like Scream was becoming, I don't want to say a parody because that's not accurate, but it almost feels like it's a little too uh, like self-referential in a lot of ways. Okay, well, we've sort of hat tip to Halloween, but now we're gonna bring in the bring in the brother connection. So that was always kind of a bit of a sticky spot for me, but it's not enough to derail it because I think there's enough in there to enjoy with this film. Certainly the stuff with Sydney and her sort of coming to terms with both her past, what was the situation with her mother, and just her own situation, I thought was really nicely handled. I would have, I think, liked to have seen her in more of the film, because it does feel like she's there, and then she like goes away for a while, and then pops up, right near, maybe towards the start of the third act. But again, there's enough there that I think that can make this film work. And certainly, at the time, this was it. Like, this was supposed to end the whole
Right.
trilogy, end this whole series, and that final shot at the end of the film is really well done, because you're half expecting there to be a twist or some kind of another surprise with Ghostface,
Right.
but it's just that, and that moment feels so earned in a lot of ways. It's, again, sort of, I keep going back to Halloween, everybody, no surprise. But
They're intertwined. These two
yeah,
franchises are
seriously,
intertwined. Yeah.
but there's that the ending with Laurie in Halloween Ends, where she's just sitting there on the porch, kind of similar to how she was at the beginning of the first film, where she's just sitting on the step outside and just sort of looking around the neighborhood. And again, that felt like a very earned moment. This felt like an earned moment where, okay, Sydney is comfortable. Like, she's not locking the doors, she's not pulling out the gun, she's at peace. And there's something uh, refreshing about that, because we don't always get those moments in a horror film, particularly in a slasher, where there's always that knee jerk reaction to have one last surprise, or the boogeyman pops up from
Right.
behind the door. And this felt like, all right, we can bookend it here, and everything is tied up. You get everything resolved with Gail and Dewey, which was nice. And I love the whole Hollywood set pieces, and the movie within a movie references. All that stuff is exciting and fun. And I sort of like how they were even referencing their own drama with what was going on with some of the stuff with Scream 2 and early Scream 3, with like endings leaking and scripts
Right.
getting out there. Like, all that is just, again, only Wes Craven could handle it with such finesse and cleverness. And of course, like we said, the big middle finger to the wine scenes. I mean, that just was that was quite well done. But yeah, again, it's not, certainly my favorite Scream film, but it's one of those movies where whenever I rewatch it, I find myself appreciating it more and more. I wish it was just a little bit tighter, like how Scream 2 is. Maybe not as, I guess, jokey at certain points, but not enough that, again, that, like, this is not, I'm not going to go, write a letter and cry about it on the internet. But it's one of those movies where I find myself appreciating it more and more. And that's something, even 6 months ago, a year ago, I would have said, oh no, this is like, lower tier Scream. But it's slowly moving its way up there. So I feel like I'm part of the club or something. But it's an enjoyable film. I guess that's what I would say. It is satisfying, tying it all together back with the first film, even though there are some, like, moments where it's like, all right, I'll just, I'll let it slide. But yeah, it's enjoyable. That's what I would say. It's an enjoyable, and it's a fitting first end, shall I say?
Well, I'm so happy that this moved up for you. It makes me so happy. I'm happy that it's not your bottom two. Hell yeah. All right. So yeah, we're yeah, very good, very good. I like it. I like it. Scream 3 is moving on up for you as it should.
I know
So
you'll have
guess
more
we're
to say on
yeah.
it. So
Oh yeah. So we're in our top 3 now, correct? Yes.
that's right. That's right.
So my number 3 has a huge like jump from my bottom 3. Like there's just it skyrockets. And my number 3 is Scream 3. I love this movie so much. To me, it's a perfect finale. Um, I don't really quite understand how people say that Scream 3 is like the Scooby Doo campiest of them all, because aside from Parker Posey, which is she's comedy gold. Oh my gosh, she's comedy gold as Jennifer Jolie. Her and Courtney Cox, oh, they are great. I wouldn't take it out. Like that's the great balance, because Scream 3 goes pretty dark places, like you just said. It's about like trauma and Hollywood abuse, sexual abuse, on top of a murderer. So it goes to pretty dark places. So I don't understand how people think that Scream 3 is more campy than anything. That to me 4 through 6 are way more campy in tone than Scream 3, minus like probably the scene with the fax machine. Like obviously that gets a little hokey, but other than that, I really think that Scream 3 is a little more, I would say, filled with humor than Scream 2 and 1, but it still has the same tone of the first two. It's just, when the movie was filmed, again, we're judging the movie. We don't really judge what's going on in the world, but when the movie was being filmed, I think that's after, was it, I forget what event, Columbine or something happened, so they had to like tone down the
That's
violence.
right.
So they did
Yeah,
have to do some tweaks, but again, I think they managed it pretty well with keeping the tone in check. Um, I love that the opening scene has a returning character killed. We never had that before, and Cotton Weary is killed in the opening scene, so that's
that's
pretty
right.
awesome. That's a first for the franchise. This is Nev Campbell's best performance in the entire franchise for me. I know the finale by heart, word for word, and I feel, again, this is something where this is natural. This feels natural from Sydney in Scream 1 to Scream 2 and Scream 3. She's like, God, I've had it with this shit. Let's get on with it. Like, she literally says that to Roman. I've heard this shit before. I'm like, yes, let's fucking go. You know why you kill people? Because you choose to. There's no one else to blame. Let's go. I'm like, yes, girl, yes. So it just feels like, she puts her heart and soul into this movie in that finale. The scene when she is on the Stab 3 set, when she goes, she's going through her memories pretty much. I think that's one of the best chase scenes in the entire franchise, when Ghostface chases her through the sets. And then, the scene when she sees her, the set piece of her mom's death that brings up so much trauma for her. And, Roman, I believe some people think this is in her head, this scene, but I do believe that there's some shit going on in her head, because obviously she's dealing with trauma. But the scene when he, gets up in the bio bag, give mommy a kiss and we'll make up. Oh, that scene gives me chills. It's so good. I just think that this movie is such a perfect trilogy capper. I love it so much. I think the scene when, she has her nightmare of her mom is very like Wes Craven, like Nightmare on Elm Street esque, and that's, it's one of the scariest scenes in the entire franchise, I think, as well. Love it so much. Again, this is Sydney's movie. I get what you're saying, that she doesn't really come back to the group until like halfway through the movie, but we still have enough scenes with her secluded, which I think is important, because Roman's pretty much coaxing her out of hiding. He finds her number, and I do. This is controversial, but I do love the voice changer. I think, again, it's spiced up.
Mm.
No matter how unrealistic it is. I mean, today it would be very realistic, but it spiced it up a little bit. It's creepy that he has everyone's voice. That was something new, and I like that a lot. And it lended itself to Sydney's trauma by using her mom's voice. I love Roman. He's the only single killer of the franchise. Kudos to him, as Kirby said in Scream 6. I do think that it's was smart to have him be the killer in a movie where we're commenting on Hollywood and abuse of power, when we find out Maureen went to Hollywood to be an actress and she was abused, and she was raped, and this led to having Roman. And I think that Maureen is a very fascinating character. People think she's a villain and a bad mom. I just think she's a very tortured soul. And I think that the reason why she gave Roman up for adoption is because she couldn't look at him, with how he was created. And when he came up to her again, we're listening to the story through the lens of a killer. So when he said she slammed the door in his face, it could have been more delicate, but she probably, I can't do this. I have a new family. I have a new life. I can't do this. I moved on, and it was probably more delicate than what he did. So it clearly didn't warrant him going to Billy and having Billy kill her. That's pretty extreme. But I do like the tie-in, is that like the reason why we have Scream and we have Billy and Sue is because, Roman's the one who pretty much put it in Billy's face that she was sleeping with his dad, and he kicked it into motion. But Billy is still the first Ghostface. Roman just initiated him killing Maureen. Billy started Ghostface. So when people say it takes away from the OG, it doesn't, because Roman didn't had nothing to do with starting Ghostface. He just was the catalyst to Maureen's death, which I do think it was important to bring him back in a movie where, Scream 1, we're starting with Sydney's so sensitive about her mom, and then Scream 3, the evolution of it's almost like a Maureen trilogy, Maureen and Sydney trilogy, the evolution of that. So I do love that it comes back into play really big in 3. I love the whole finale set piece in the mansion. It's filmed at the same place where H2O was filmed, so it's awesome. Love that so much. I love, Sydney's like, come and get me, motherfucker. You want me? Come and get me. Love that line. Love Gail in this. Love Dewey in this. I love Gail, the bangs and all. So much fun. Yeah, this movie's a blast. It's fun, Scream, but it's also very powerful and emotional. And like you said, this is how you end a franchise, for now. We didn't have another movie for 11 years. And I love that at the ending, the doors open and it's like Sydney's okay with it, she's at peace, but it's also like the doors left open for more. There could always be more. I love the dual meaning. We're introduced to Patrick Dempsey, Kincaid, and we're most likely going to be seeing him again. So that's awesome. That I love that relationship. He's a red herring, but by the end, he really was looking out for Sid's best interest, and that was a red herring done right, in my opinion. It's very natural.
Yeah.
Um, I love that, of course, that Dewey and Gale get engaged. It's all my people are getting their happy endings for the time being, and I love that so much. Yeah, Scream 3 is an all timer for me. I think it goes up there with one of the best, final chapters of a trilogy. I love it so much. Again, my nitpick would be that like I could have used more blood and gore, but again, they couldn't really do it. But yeah, this movie's awesome. I love it so much, and I think that people who put it last place, I just don't understand you. It's considered the dark horse of their franchise, but I didn't even know there was a divisiveness until like I became part of social media because I was watching. It's like this is fucking amazing. This is awesome. I love it so much. And now it's like I don't get the polarizing nature of Scream 3. But yeah, I love it so much. It's in my top three. It always will be. I'm an OG trilogy guy, and Scream 3 is one of the best.
Yeah, social media is always gonna stir the
Yeah,
pot.
do
Yeah,
their thing. Do their
it's
thing.
seriously Twitter's gonna Twitter or something. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, again, I can attest. This was one film that it was much
Right.
lower on my list. So it has, I can see much more of the strengths of it than certainly the
Hell
weaknesses.
yeah.
But yeah, so there we go. Consider me a convert. I'm converting people with Halloween ends, so it makes sense.
Oh, I'm with you on that too. I do like the parallel you made. I do think that Halloween Ends and Scream 3 have a lot of parallels, and I love that too.
Yeah, and again, I think time heals all wounds, as we will see with
Right.
Halloween ends, which is,
Which
uh,
happened with Scream 3. Scream 3 is
hey,
getting some love. So
that's
Halloween Ends. Give it five. It's gonna be 5 years
it.
tops. Halloween Ends will be
It's
considered.
going to happen.
It's a
Wait till the
masterpiece.
new
Yeah.
stuff comes out, and
Yep.
we'll circle back on it.
We can do
Um,
a whole 5 hour episode on Halloween Ends, man.
Seriously,
It's
I
gonna be
mean,
great.
like that. I mean, just literally that whole, just like each individual scene.
Yep.
um, yeah, all right. So now we're really getting into the trio, if you will.
Hell yeah.
And this one for me, number three is Scream 2. I love this movie. It is a near perfect sequel, in my opinion. It picks up where the last one left off. I mean, the first film is so great it could be a standalone film. Again, much like with Halloween. But if you're going to do a sequel, this is how you do a sequel. Like, again, as much as I love, say, Halloween 2, which I think is another masterclass, this is sort of a cut above that, if you will. No pun intended. Again, but this is how you do a sequel. If you're going to follow up Scream, you do it this way. You expand the setting. We're going to college now. It's a different environment. Some time has passed. I love that there's the movie reference. They're making a movie about Sydney's life. All of that stuff is just sort of nice little additional pieces to this puzzle. But I mean, just the whole situation with, okay, who is the killer? I mean, the first time I saw this, I had no idea
Mm-hmm.
it was going to be Billy's mother. I said, okay, maybe it's Hallie. No, Derek's two, that's two on the nose. I said, okay, maybe they'll go crazy. Maybe it's Gail this time. And I think even in one of the drafts of the script, she may have been a killer, or even Cotton might have been. I think there was a lot going on with this script, if memory serves me right. But no, of course, when it's finally revealed that, I mean, first you got Mickey, he's one of
Oh,
the greats
love him.
in this franchise. I mean, just pure insanity with that guy. That's how you create a psycho. But Mrs. Loomis, I mean, Laurie Metcalf, I mean, she's wonderful in everything she does, but she is having such a ball in this movie. And I saw someone say, "Oh, it's way too campy for Scream." It is the
It's
right
perfect.
balance, and you made the point about Bailey in Scream 6. That is just like a full ham dinner and beans. I
Right.
mean, this is perfect. It's the right balance
She's
of
killing it.
yeah. Again, she's over she's lost it. I mean, she's an angry mother. It's Mrs.
Right.
Voorhees, if you will.
Exactly.
No, I the whole showdown is wonderful. I love that they tie in the play that Sydney's doing with Cassandra, and all of those sort of unique parallels to the actual story, and how that fits in with how Sydney's kind of a stand-in for seeing of the future, if you will, and all these horrific things coming around her, but there's really nothing she can do. It's her fate, it's her destiny. I love that kind of all ties together with this. This is my favorite performance by Nev Campbell. I think this is her
Oh yeah.
strongest one. She really comes into her own from the first film. She, again, all of that baggage, all of that emotional scar, it's there, but she's tougher. And there's that scene where she has the dialogue with David Warner, her
So
the
good.
acting professor. I mean, that again, for just such a short scene, it's probably one of my favorite moments in the entire film, because I mean that's again, that's how you write a final girl. You sort of you don't always have to do it with like a chase sequence or some kind of big heroics, but you can kind of do it in those soft quiet moments. And that's what Scream 2 I think has a lot of. There's a lot of those character moments which make the drama and the blood and all that have much more impact. Like, of course, we lose Randy in this film, which I know some people are like, oh, they shouldn't have killed him. Like, if you're going to kill a main character, like that's how you do it, because it's
And this movie had
unexpected.
stakes.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, it's genuine stakes, not just for the hell of it. It feels earned in a way. It's unexpected, but like it works with the way this story is going. And then of course when we get the explanation from Mrs. Loomis later on about her going a little knife happy and all of that. I mean, just everything is perfect. I think it's even Williamson's best script, even though Scream One is certainly sort of the OG. But there's just so much to do with this film, because you not only have the success of the first film, but you have to sort of tie it all together and give something new and exciting. And I think they hit it right out of the park with this film. Just the tone, there's a creepiness, particularly when they're sort of walking around campus, even in the daytime. Like it's chilling. Like, I remember the first time watching it, like when they're trying to figure out where he is on the phone call, and they're all running around, and like there's like little comedic moments where like Dewey grabs the phone from somebody, but like it's still all with that suspense and adrenaline. And then of course when Randy finally gets it, I mean it's shocking and it's terrifying, and it all works. Like and I sort of said, like with before with Scream 3, how there's maybe a little too many silly moments. This one kind of has just the right amount. Like that whole scene in the either the library or the cafeteria where Derek does his his best impersonation and whatnot. Like all that just works with this film, and I
Hmm.
think that's a testament to how these characters are written. Like, it's very easy in a horror film, particularly a slasher, to make the characters unforgettable or even unlikable. And there's nobody in this film, even small, almost throwaway characters like the chief of police, or even some of the side reporter characters. Like, everybody has a purpose, everybody has a moment, if you will, and nothing feels forced, nothing feels over the top. It's perfect. Like, I'll even be throw another controversial or hot take out there. You could have ended it with this film, and I think it would have felt satisfying. Like, because it's that ending with Sydney. Like, all right, let Cotton go have his moment in the
Yeah.
spotlight. Gail is with Dewey going to the hospital. Yeah, Sydney is alone, and she's lost everybody. But you know what? She's comfortable. Like, she knows who she is, and there's just something kind of poignant about her just walking off, and it's that long, wide shot of just her kind of surrounded in a sea of people, but she's just moving forward, and I like that. I think that was a really special way to end this film. Whereas like the first film, you kind of just get like a bit of like a over the shoulder shots and like just a wide shot of the sun rising. Whereas this one, like, you really feel like it is part of her story. And I don't know. This is a great film. I could do a whole episode just on Scream 2. I think
Oh,
it's
maybe we should.
yeah. No,
Maybe we should,
honestly, I
man.
mean, again, I mean, didn't even mention Sarah Michelle Gellar in this film. Again, talk about someone not a
Iconic.
huge role, but it, she's perfect in it. Like, you remember the character of Cece. I mean, her whole sequence is terrifying, and it's shocking. And again, stakes for the sake of having stakes. Like, I mean, it's just it's a great film. It's a great follow up, and anybody who says it's their favorite Scream, I have nothing but respect for you because it's I could honestly see why because
Yep.
it takes what the original does and then some.
You are stating facts, man. This movie is brilliant. Um, it has the best set pieces of the franchise to this day. It's better than I know people love six because six is crazy, but there's the suspense wise and two takes it hands down. You were said everything spot on, but we will be talking about Scream two again.
I
Um,
figured. I
but
figured.
this is my number two. Um, this is where I'm gonna lose some people, but listen, the OG trilogy, they all could be tied for me. My number two is Scream. The OG 1996 is my number two.
Hold the
So people,
phone.
stay
Okay.
with me here, people. Stay with me. I mean, what has not been said about Scream, the OG? It's a classic movie. Everyone going to sit in the theater thinking that they're going to see a movie starring Drew Barrymore, only for her to be killed off in the first 10 minutes. I mean, that's how you open a movie, and that's how you show people like we're not messing around. This is something different. This is something that you never know what's going to happen and what's around the corner, what's going to happen next. I mean, that's how you start a franchise right there. But I mean, this movie's literally the definition of perfection. It's one of the greatest slasher movies ever made. It stands up there with Halloween. It literally intertwines Halloween and pokes fun at itself for following the Halloween formula, but it's like in good fun and it's smart and clever. I love it. Again, we're introduced to the best final girl of all time, Sydney Prescott. She really grows into her own. Even by the end of the first movie, she's fighting for herself. I love that we have a different kind of character in Gail, where she's an important player, but she's really like a mean person, but she's also just she's in the finale too, and she's just she's her own different version of a final girl. I love that we have the contrast of Gail and Sydney throughout the entire franchise, and we're introduced to both of them. Again, Dewey is everyone wants to give Dewey a hug. He's everyone's goofy deputy that we just fall in love with. He is the heart and soul of the franchise, which is again why I'm so upset that he's not with us anymore. But it's just everything clicks so well. The movie references are fucking awesome. The scene by the fountain, we feel like this group is an actual like set of friends. Like I mean, they
Mm.
feel like real people and real friends versus some of the five and the sixes where they feel like they're just part of a script. I mean, talk about a cast. I mean, Matthew Lillard, Ski Ulrich. We have Rose McGowan, Jamie Kennedy. I mean, these are fucking icons. and in addition to Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette, um, it's just Scream is just so good. I will say it probably does still have some of the best kills of the franchise. We have the garage kill, which is an
Mm.
iconic kill. I do wish that Tatum made it onto a sequel because she was like such a good friend. She had a little spice to her, but that scene's awesome. She fights. She fights to the end of her death scene. Though she puts up a fight. I love it. I love Sydney's first chase scene in her house. When she just says, she's calling out, she doesn't watch horror movies because, some dumb big breasted girl running up the stairs when she go out the front door, and then she literally goes up the stairs. But she does try to go out the front door, but it's just the meta. That's when we're introduced to Wes and Kevin's brilliance, and it's just, so damn good. Love it so much. We get actual red herrings in this movie. Like, we had Billy, who were like, oh, he's too obvious, he can't be the killer, only for Wes to fuck with you. I'm like, oh no, he is the killer. Like, we see him die, but he's not. It's so good. Her dad's a red herring. We don't know. By the end of the movie, Sydney's like to Randy and Stu, she's like, fuck you both. You're both gonna stay locked out. So I'm like, that's a final girl. Like, I'm just trying to live here. Get out. But it's just so good. Again, the people don't realize how long the finale, like the third act starts. I think it's like a 50-minute long finale. That's how long we're
Yeah.
like at Stu's house. It's so damn good. But the stuff before that is great character moments for Sydney. Just like again the tragic story. Like we see her mom. It goes back to her mom. It's just heartbreaking stuff that she just lost her mom a year ago, and now she's being attacked by a killer. Targeted by a killer. It's so good. It feels like we're actually in high school with these people. It feels real. Like that's what Wes created, a movie that feels real, and he created a slasher movie where the characters are aware of the horror genre. This is, we're introduced to it. Obviously, in the OG, it follows through the whole franchise, but I think it might have been done the most effective in Scream One with the characters in the movie talking about horror movies, and we have a whole minute clip of Nev City's like, Jamie Lee Curtis, why is she in all these movies? Prom Night, Terror Chain, she's the Scream Queen. As I'm like, hell yeah, like this is awesome shit we're watching right now. It's so damn good. I love how the finale of the movie coincides with Laurie in the finale of the
Mm.
OG Halloween. It's just like, this is chef's kiss shit right now. I think the kitchen scene with Billy, Stu, and Sydney is one of the great all-time scenes in horror history, horror finales. I mean, when they start stabbing each other, it's like these two are demented. And again, I mean, Ski Ulrich is so good. He's fantastic performance, but Matthew Lillard, he is a scene stealer as well. I mean, comedy gold while also being terrifying. That's hard to do, and he pulls off both. My mom and dad are gonna be so mad at me. It's just so you're laughing, and then you're on the edge of your seat, like within a 30-second period in this movie, and you can't say that about really any other franchise. It's so damn good. So yeah, this movie kicked off the franchise, and it's my along with Halloween, my favorite movie of all time. It's so damn good. It's perfect. It's a perfect movie. It's a perfect script. We talked about script a lot in this episode. When we're talking about some of the later sequels, script, you don't get a much tighter and perfect script than this movie. It's so damn good. Yeah, I'm in love with this movie. It just like again, if I'm allowed to have a tie, it would be tie with my number one. But we're not. That's not the rules. So we can't have a tie. So this movie is just right, 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 right. And I'll explain why, I promise. But it's so good and I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorite movies.
I mean, to quote Randy, don't you know the rules? So yeah, no, we can't have a tie because certainly, if we did, I could have a tie with this, but
Yep.
I won't do that to myself, and I won't do that to you, the listeners, because you're here to hear the rankings. So that's what matters here. So, oh God, I could honestly, depending on the day of
We
the
could
week,
go on all day
probably,
about the OG, yeah.
yeah, I could argue. Look. I'll save my thoughts for Scream in a moment
All right.
because yeah, I mean you really said it all there and so eloquently. But oh, good God, these two films right here, I could make a case for one being one being two. Like they're almost interchangeable. But I will stick with my list because I've
Do it.
done
Yeah.
I've done enough. So number two for me is Scream 4, and as I promised, I
Love
have
it.
a lot to say with this film. I think it is the best sequel in the entire series. I love how this film, in a interesting way, deals with the family issue, I think, a lot more effectively than Scream 3. And I think can even act as a better conclusion, if you will, to the series than Scream 3. Even though we don't necessarily get a final moment with say Sydney. I mean, there is that deleted scene with her and
Yeah, they should
Dewey
have
in the
had
hospital, which
that.
that should have been kept, but I get why they did it. But yeah, just with the way it ends, I don't know about you, I feel so much better. Like her and Jill lying on the ground, like that was perfection right there. Don't fuck with the original.
Hmm.
That was a chef's kiss moment. But this film, it is like what I mentioned with Scream 5. This is how you do a legacy sequel because you've got all of these new characters that are established, and there's sort of like homages to the original crew in Scream 1, but everybody has their own unique personality. Kirby, I think, is one of the great characters in all of horror. I think that she is such a wonderful creation, and I'm so angry that she did not get a better due in Scream 6 because
Me
she
too.
is wonderful in this film, and Hayden Panettiere really makes
That
this
phone call.
character. It's incredible. I mean, just her acting with the way she's like in and out of tears and angst. It's so well done. And Kirby's one of those characters. Like on paper, she may not work. Like she's basically a female Randy in a lot of ways, but
Right.
she's able to inject such a unique personality and I don't want to say cynicism, but there is that she almost has an edge to her throughout it, and I think there's so much potential that could have been explored if things had gone a certain way. But that's neither here nor there. This film, I love that we go back to Woodsboro after a two film absence. There's something again about Scream being in Woodsboro that always it's like going back to Haddonfield. It
Right.
feels like that's where you want to see what Ghostface is up to. I love that Sydney is, seemingly moved on with her life, but yet, it's sort of like that moment, like when the phone call happens upstairs. It's like turning on a light. She's right back into the thick of it. She's gone back into the lion's den, and in a lot of ways, it almost feels very cathartic that she's gone back into it one last time. The whole angle with Jill, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but I mean, she might be my favorite Ghostface. Like, just the layers to the performance here. I mean, first of Emma Roberts just hits it out of the park, but just her whole modus operandi, like just the fact that she is. I mean, one, she's the cousin, and she's lived in the shadow of Sydney and all of this attention she's gotten. So, I mean, right off the bat, you've got a great motivation, but then that she's sort of this representation of sort of kids of that day, and even like I mean we're seeing it now. I
Today.
mean this
Yeah.
film was so ahead of its time, it's not even funny. But like that she wants this, that she wants to become Sydney, that she wants to be. It's not just to kill her. She wants to become this final girl. She wants to have all this attention and glory. And the fact that she goes to such lengths, I mean, killing her mom, killing off her friends, seemingly killing off her cousin. I mean, she's a bad bitch right there. And it's frightening. It's hilarious on one end, but it feels in keeping with this series that like this would be the next possible extent. Like someone would want to become Ghostface in a way. Someone would want to have all of the sort of fame and notoriety that goes with being a follower, if you will, of Sidney Prescott. Really, really powerful stuff. I mean, just that whole exchange where I don't need friends, I need fans. Like, what am I supposed to do? Go to college, work. Like, I mean, it's such a funny line, but like, there's so much like there's a
Yep.
lot to unpack there with the way she's
And this was 2011, and that's crazy.
again, the film was so ahead of its time. I mean, if the movie had come out 10 years later, this movie would have done
Oh,
incredible numbers, and
100%.
I think would have been much better received than it was at the time, because this film has its finger on the pulse, and I mean, it's frightening, but it's also kind of fascinating as a social commentary. I just love it. I love the sort of the meta vibes. And again, it's commenting on the reboots, if you will, or the remakes of that particular era. And you said something really uh, great earlier about how the movie tricks you into thinking it's going to be about Jill, it's going to be about Kirby, and it's not. It's still about Gail and Dewey and Sydney. And I think that is such a great twist of fate, because you expect them to be the
Right.
sort of the elders who are shepherding the young
Right.
next generation, and it is still very much Sydney's story, and I think that was really clever. But then you sort of go one step further and you flip it where you know the whole thing, it's not just we're trying to kill you, I'm trying to be you, Sydney. Like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my god, this is so it's powerful, it's potent, it's just it's one of those endings where I almost would have loved to have seen if they could have done what was the original intention with it
Five
ending
and
on that
six. Yeah.
cliffhanger and
Yeah.
seeing what happens, because then I mean that really could have been something even more fascinating. But I mean what we got is what we got, and I'm forever grateful for it. This movie, again, there's the right amount of humor, there's the right amount of suspense, and just from the social commentary that this film offers, I just find myself every time I rewatch it saying, "Yep, okay, yep, it was right there. It was right about
Yeah.
social media. Like it was right about everything, and we're seeing it still to this day." Again, that's the power of these kinds of movies, where it can really get under the skin in a lot of ways, and sort of present stuff without being preachy or over the top. But yeah, I mean, everybody gets their moment. Gail, like I said, she has a great chase sequence, or not really quite a chase sequence, but the whole
Set
showdown in
piece.
the
Yeah.
barn. Yeah, that's fantastic. The whole stabathon. I mean, again,
Oh.
everything here, like again, even I know some people sort of will knock Charlie. I think he was a perfect foil uh, for Jill in this film. I mean, Jill certainly steals the spotlight. I mean, again, once
Yeah.
she is
Well,
revealed, it's
he's
like
made to be her yes man. Like he's her
exactly.
yes man.
I
He's
th-
yeah.
he's a much more docile version of Stu in a lot of
Right.
ways, which I kind of like. Again,
Right.
there's enough hat tips to this movie where it's acknowledging what came before, but yet it's also charting its own course, which I think probably at the time audiences weren't expecting. They maybe were thinking it would be something a little bit more straightforward or more like the other ones. But I don't know. This movie, I could go on at great length about. It is, it's chilling. Like I said, that scene with Olivia in the bedroom, like that is terrifying. That is
So
probably the
good.
most graphic scene in the entire series, and just the sinister phone call, the nature of Ghostface. Yeah, he really is. He's out for blood in this film, and again, right up until the end. I mean, and Jill's doing it to herself. Like it's just it's a great movie. Again, the humor is perfect. I mean, Dewey is always a pleasure. I mean, again, yeah, he could have maybe had a little bit more to do, but he's the Dewey that we love. He's now the sheriff. Nobody takes him seriously, of course. Like he's still getting knocked down with this time with bed pants. I mean, it's just like it's such a
So good.
it's just again
Such a good time.
it just the whole movie works. And again, the fact that it was the cousin, like I don't, for some reason I can buy this more than the brothering. I think there's just, and maybe it's just the way Emma Roberts portrays the character and just sort of the way it's written, that kind of all makes it more worthwhile. But I don't know, this film, like I can put on any day of the week and just have a great, and I have to watch it from beginning to end. This is not one of those movies where I can have on in the background. This, like, if Scream 4 is on, I'm watching Scream 4. Just a I'll stop myself there because I could keep going on, but it's perfection. Again, I could make the case this could be my favorite, but I won't.
That's the beauty of Wes and Kevin together, man. Yeah, this movie, like you
Yeah.
said, this movie has aged so well. Specifically for me, I actually I'm in love with this movie now. Like, love it so much. Again, it's leaps and bounds better than 5 and 6. I love when Emma Roberts, Jill at the end, because Sydney's like, oh, Dewey's like, oh, she can still make it. She can still pull through, and she
Yeah.
goes in there, she's like, who are you, Michael fucking Myers?
Yeah.
I love that scene so
That
much.
was
It's like,
great.
you're not gonna kill her. You're not gonna kill her. And I also love the scene when we're doing Kirby's phone call, how it intercuts with Nev like getting the knife and like going to search at
Yes.
the house. It's like the final girl is taking back the franchise with that knife, and we find out it's going back to her. It's getting handed off back from these new hot young newcasts back to Sydney. I love how it's intercut with Kirby scene. It's like perfectly directed. I get chills every time when you see her walking through the house with that kitchen knife. So good, mixed with Kirby's phone when you're like
Oh, that phone
she's handing
call.
off like every remake ever made of a horror movie up to that point. Oh, it's so well directed, so good. And Charlie used to be my least favorite killer, and thanks to Scream 6 and me like reevaluating Scream 4, he is not anymore. So hell yeah.
Oh, it's great. It's such a wonderful film, and I can't wait for it to be released on 4K so I can add it to
Oh,
the
I think that's the
collection.
next one up.
Yeah,
We
that's
got the
like
OG trilogy out of the way. This is the
literally.
next one up.
I'll be Steelbook, you name it. I will
Yep.
be buying it. That's get off my
Well,
physical
we'll have to do a
medium.
full-on episode on this
No,
one when it
this
gets
one
out.
is
Yeah.
yeah. I think this one is worthy of a full discussion because there is so much to unpack with it.
Yeah, I mean, I love, like I said, obviously I have my ranking, you have yours, but I love Scream rankings because, in my opinion, there is no like bad Scream movie. So I think every ranking is super unique. So I love that you have a four as number two. Um, but my number one is going
Let's
to
hear.
be Scream 2. Again, like if I could do a double feature, it's going to always be like 1 and 2 together. But I do love Scream 2, and I'll tell you guys why. My main reason is Scream 1. I do think that this is the best paced and structured Scream of the entire franchise, including Scream 1. I think it has the best set pieces. I mean, we have the opening scene is iconic in and of itself when you have, you know, the two black characters going to see the movie when they usually get killed off, and they do get killed off, but they play with it. Kevin plays with it in the writing, and they're going to see Stab. That to me is the good gimmick. Like that's how you do a good tongue in cheek, and you do a meta opening versus
Hmm.
spe- 4 a little bit, but especially 6, where it's just like kind of like to do it for an aha moment. This is actually like you're going to a theater to watch a stab movie while we are going to watch a Scream movie. It's like it's so perfect. It's so well done. I think, and it's also terrifying because she thinks that her boyfriend's sitting next to her, but it's really the killer after killing her boyfriend coming back. And everyone in first of all, the theater audience is like they're horrible people because they're like going crazy. But again, they're into it. You know, we see Marvel movies, people get into it, but they're getting into it and screaming when the opening kill is happening, and she's actually getting killed, and everyone thinks it's part of the movie. I'm like, this is horrific, terrible, terrible, horrific stuff happening, but it's so well done. um, we have the Gale chase scene, mixed with the Dewey death, which is so
Hmm.
heartbreaking. Like, it's not his death. We know that, obvious, but I call it the death because we think he dies. And again, he only gets stabbed like 2 or 3 times, so like way more realistic than Chad. And it's in the same spot where he got stabbed in Scream once. I mean, I could buy it, but just Courtney's acting when he's like screaming for her help, and she just looks back because she can't hear him at first because of the two-way and soundproof mirror, and she just the way that Courtney Cox just like her facial expressions when she's going down the friggin' mirror with him, and then she has to like cut out of her grief just to fight Ghostface again and like get away from it. So well done. And so I think her chasing in Scream 2 is one of the best chase scenes like ever. And after that set piece, you go right to the Sydney car set piece, which is the most suspenseful scene ever when she's climbing over Ghostface and trying to get out the car window, and then she has Hallie do the same thing. It's just no one does suspense like Wes, and this movie is just full of suspense nonstop. Again, we have CC Cooper, who she's only like Sarah Michelle Gellar is a legend in and of herself. She's only in like 1 or 2 classroom scenes before that, but we still feel for her and connect with her, not just because she's Sarah Michelle Gellar, but that character did something for us. So whereas Scream 6, the only character death, you mentioned it, like Ghostface goes apeshit, but he's killing like people in like a convenience store who we have no idea who they are. The only person who we really care about dying, and we just met her, is Annika in Scream 6. And, like, we just met her for like a few minutes. I like her, but I didn't care as much as Cece. And, so it's just like the way these movies have different impacts of the characters who are dying. So I think the Cece set piece is one of the greats. I love her phone call with Ghostface. I mean, who doesn't love Sarah Michelle Gellar? So awesome. Poor girl can't make it out of a horror movie alive, but she has great, great
I know,
moments in all of
right?
them. Randy gets killed in Scream 2. I mean, I was heartbroken, but going back at it, it was so necessary. And again, we take the time after Randy's death to see Sydney's grief. Like, we see her in the police station, like, oh my God, I gotta call his mom. And Dewey's like, I already made that phone call. And she's like, it should have been me. Should have been me. Like, you see these consequences on Sydney where it feels like she's an actual person and character. Whereas, again, like, you go to Sam, it's just like, okay, boss bitch badass, people that, but let's get to boss bitch badass. And like Sydney, it's a gradual, slow, like her realizing herself. And you said it. One of my favorite scenes is, which is exemplifies who Sydney is and what a final girl is. She's like in that scene with Gus, I'm a fighter, I didn't hear that. I'm a fighter, I don't believe you. She's like, I'm a fighter. You're like, okay, I'm not fucking with this
Hmm.
girl. She's a fighter. Like, it literally shows why Sydney is the final girl. And it has my favorite moment of the entire franchise, when she's going to Mickey, you're forgetting one thing about Billy Loomis. I fucking killed him. I'm like, best line, best moment of the entire franchise for me. I love it so much. Mickey and Billy are tied as my 2 favorite killers. Push come to shove, I may put Mickey. It's just because he's killing because he wants to kill. Like, he doesn't have really anything connected to Sydney besides, Mrs. Loomis brought him in, but he's ready to, like, he's just an apeshit crazy dude, and he really did my girl Sydney bad because he messed with her and manipulated her with her, making her think that Derek was the killer, when all along he was that loving boyfriend who gave that. Again, I will go to bat for the performance in the cafeteria because it's the one moment, like one of the few moments in the entire franchise where we not only see Sydney smile and be happy, but it also is crucial because in the finale, it makes it that much more heartbreaking when Mickey is able to manipulate her to not trust him, Derek, and then it leads to his death. And his last lines to Sydney, "What I would never hurt you," and she's like, "Oh, it's so heartbreaking because he just made her think that he was going to be another Billy, and he's not. He was the good boyfriend who she needed this whole time." And Mickey really fucked with her mentally. Like, I like how you said at the end when she's walking off, in the park. It's almost kind of like, I also would say, like, Halloween Ends. It's not, it's hopeful, but it's not happy because she
Mm,
just lost all of her friends and her boyfriend again, but she made it out alive. And if there's one thing Cindy's gonna do, it's survive. But it's not happy because it leads to her going into hiding in Scream 3. That's how much Mickey and Mrs. Loomis fucked her up in Scream 2. Like, she had to go into hiding in Scream 3, and like she really got tormented by these two. I would say specifically Mickey. But yeah, everything you said, like you went in on it in Scream 2, and I would agree times 10. It's my favorite Scream movie because I was introduced to Gail, Dewey, and Sydney in Scream 1 and Randy, but I fell in love with them in Scream 2. I think their characters are developed that much more in Scream 2. And for me, I go to Scream obviously because I love slasher movies, but like Scream is the series that you're going to go to for a slasher that's about the character development just as much as the set pieces and the killings. And I think that Scream 2 develops our, you know, trio so well, and it made me fall in love with them. Versus Scream One, where I was introduced to them, and I did fall in love with them immediately. But Scream Two, I really, 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 really had time with them, and I'm like, this is my favorite Gale. Like, I love her turning point in Scream Two, where in the beginning she's still out for fame and out for herself, but midway through the movie she's like, I want to help Sydney too. Like, I just want to find this fucker. I love that line between her and Dewey. I feel really bad because she gets her own, evolution in Scream 2 alone. And I just think it's so great. It's the best sequel of all time, in my opinion. It's my favorite Scream movie. I rewatch it so much. I think it's perfectly paced. I don't understand people who say it's not. It's because if we didn't have those character moments, the movie wouldn't be as impactful overall. If we didn't slow down a little bit and just take time to sit with the consequences of what's happening on screen. Yeah, man, I think that Mrs. Loom, I mean, you said it, Laurie Metcalf, she's camp, but it's camp in the perfect way. It's camp where it's over the top, but you still feel like she's just that mad because of what happened with her son and, why she lost her husband as well in her eyes is, Sydney and her mom. It's so good, so over the top, Oh, I love when Sydney's like, you're just as crazy as your son. It's like, oh shit, it's good. It's so good, and it's such an iconic movie. I think it's just my favorite sequel. It's my favorite Scream movie. It always will be. Again, if I could have Scream 1, Scream 2, and Scream 3 tied, I would, but you can't play by those rules. So yes, Scream 2 is top dog for me. I do think it's the best directed Scream movie, and I think that it's an all timer. It's my movie. It's my baby.
I have nothing but respect for that, man. Nothing but respect for that. It's a damn good film. It's a damn good film,
Yep.
and especially in horror where the sequels can often be inferior products.
Right.
Scream is one of those rare cases where the sequels, but particularly the first one, definitely keeps up the pace, and
Right.
in many cases does elevate the material more so even than the first film. So yeah, that's another film. Could do a whole separate podcast on
Oh,
Scream
we might
too,
have to
because
one day.
no, yeah, I think we add that to the list. No, because there's a lot that can be unpacked with that one.
Well, I love that you said that it did everything Scream did, but it just took it up a notch, and that's so true. That's why
Yeah,
they're both perfect movies, in my opinion.
they're great companion pieces. Particularly, you want to
Good
watch them
one-two
back
punch, just like you said,
exactly.
Halloween and
Yeah,
Halloween 2.
yeah,
Good
no,
one-two punch.
same kind of thing. Yeah, and on that note, that brings me to my number one, and we'll probably at this point there's no surprises left, everybody, but it is the OG. In the words of the Halloween trailer, the one, the only, the classic, Scream. This film is not only my favorite movie of all the Screams, but it is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think this is a perfect blend of horror and comedy, even though this is not an outright laugh fest. The elements of satire in this film and sort of meta references, if you will, to horror movies is just too good to overlook. I love how self aware this film is about how the characters are aware that they are essentially in the workings of a horror movie. I just think that is such a unique concept. It's sort of amazing that it took that long for something like that to to come to fruition, particularly with how much these kind of movies were uh, everywhere in the 1980s. But it's really a hat tip to Kevin Williamson, who loved Halloween, and as someone who loves Halloween, it's my third or second favorite film of all time. Like the fact that this is a love letter to that film just makes me love this movie even more so. One thing that I really haven't actually touched on tonight, but it's really apparent in this film. The cinematography is great in
Hmm.
particularly 1 through 4, but
Agreed.
in this film especially, just like the fact that we are in a small town, and again, it's in California, but it could be anywhere. The way Craven chose to set the scenes. There's a lot in daylight, which I think is brilliant. I love when horror movies will go against the convention because it's always going to be at night. I love when we can get into that daylight or even a brightly lit sequence. Like even just that moment. I know people have sometimes knocked it, but where Sydney and um, t- God, I'm blanking on her name. Her
Tatum.
best Tatum. Yeah, there we go.
Tatum.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, they were in the grocery store, and
I
you
like
just
that
see
scene. Yeah,
like
people
I,
did.
I just think that is so one. It's a great little like aha self reference moment of a horror
Right.
film, but I just love just that again. It's in broad daylight when Principal Himbry is killed. It's in his
Daylight.
office. The lights are like I love that this movie goes against so much of the conventional wisdom, so that by the time we finally get to the end, the big third act, I mean, like you said, it's about 50 minutes at Stu's house. It's warranted, but even then, like there's a lot of stuff that takes place in brightly lit rooms. Like when
Right.
Ghostface confronts Sydney, it's in a brightly lit room. I just
Right.
think that's such a unique way to play with the convention in a way that's not always apparent because more often than not you're going to be in dark shadows or poorly lit rooms, and this is like it kind of is saying yeah the terror is out there. It doesn't have to hide in the shadows. And I kind of like how Ghostface is a little clumsy in this film. Like he's always getting knocked down, or Sidney punches him and he falls, but like or even like with the beer bottles with Tatum, like all that stuff is
Oh,
just
such a good scene.
it's sort of in a weird way humanizes the Ghostface character. Not that we're meant to understand these
Right.
characters or sympathize with them, but it's sort of it's different than like a Jason or a Freddy, where they're just sort of these hulking brutes. And I
Right.
specifically left out Michael because that's a whole other category. But like it just sort of adds to that cleverness. Like Ghostface is like stumbling over his feet, or like he
Right.
gets like the briefcase or that rolly cart shoved in him by the stairs,
It
like all
it
of
makes it
that.
real too because you don't know who's behind the mask. That makes it
Bingo,
scary because it could be anyone who's next to you. Without the you don't know who it is. You'd always know it's Jason or Freddy, but you don't. It could be your best friend next to you. So
bingo.
that kind of adds to like it's more real, but it's also scary because you don't know who it is.
That's the thing, and on that idea of it being real, the red herrings in this film are perfect. I mean, it goes through the checkbox perfectly. I mean, at one point you think maybe the chief of police is doing it because they've
Right.
got that close up of the boot. Like again, Wes Craven was at the top of his game with this film, and just all the little nods to not just Halloween, but countless other horror films, Texas Chainsaw, Friday. Like there's just so
It's
many
endless.
moments. I mean, like even his little in joke appearances as Fred,
So
the
good.
janitor. Like that's just again chef's kiss right there. I love the dynamic of the friends in this one because they feel the most realistic of
Agreed.
any of the characters, even more so than Scream 2 and 4. Like these, they all feel like friends, and it's not like
Right.
we're just sort of walking into their lives for this horror movie. Like when we meet them at the lunch scene, or even Tatum and Sydney walking to class, like they feel like they have been friends forever. Like they've been in this town forever. Like there's that history, there's that familiarity, and that's something you don't always get in horror movies. And that's just another thing I really appreciate. It kind of brings me back to Halloween. Like we feel like Annie, Linda, and Laurie have been friends their entire lives,
Right.
and you get that with Sydney and Stu and Billy and Randy. Like it's all these feel like actual teenagers and not just all right characters playing a part in a horror movie. Again, the suspense is incredible. I mean, the whole third act is just perfection. And I mean, I certainly said I think Scream 2 is probably the strongest script of the original two, but you have to give it to Williamson with just what he wrote here because it is
Oh yeah.
so it's so aware, but it never goes into like outright parody or
Mm-mm.
poking fun of the genre. Like it truly is a love letter to slasher films, to horror films, and I love as an aside that the original title was Scary Movie. Like there's just
Right.
something kind of. I mean, Scream, it's perfect, it works, and it's synonymous with the entire franchise. But I love that it all started out that way, and again, these people they're aware, they understand the tropes, but like even we said with Sydney, she still falls into them. Like
Right.
again, it just
Well, even with Randy, he
yeah.
introduces the rules. Never say I'll be right back. He's, and then or look behind you. And
Don't
he's,
look, yeah, look behind you. No, it just
don't have sex.
no, no,
Don't
literally.
drink, and they're all drink, and he's hammered in the scene. Don't drink or do drugs. It's just so. Oh, it's so self aware.
No, it's yeah, it's a perfect film, and it's so smart and it's so funny, and the twist at the of course with Billy. Again, it's one thing to just be like we don't have a motive like that would have been scary enough, but then when it goes to that extra level, and Billy gives his monologue that even Stu was not aware of, I think to some extent, like he's going on about his father, like it's really it's frightening. There's no other way to say it. It's really it just sort of adds that extra layer to this film. Okay, this is more than just
Right.
some random psycho. Like there's a he has his dark motivations for doing all this, and it's again it just sort of adds another layer of pathos and sort of story to this film that is not always in a slasher movie. Like all right, you kill the killer and that's the end of it. But like there's more to it. Like they really get into the psychology of the characters, and it's wonderful. It's a love letter to the genre. It's a send up to Halloween. Again, it just even the nods like Gail coming in at the end with the gun and shooting, and again
So
it's
good.
right like Loomis. Like it's just
Yep.
it's
And she's
so
even in the
well
coat,
done. Williamson
the
was
jacket.
cooking on all firing on all cylinders there with this film. It's great. It's a perfect film. It's a perfect horror movie, and yeah, it's my number one. It has to be. It just has to be.
Yeah. It's a directing and writing masterclass.
Oh
It's
yeah,
it's it's like Scream, obviously the franchise, and it's just slasher, but on another level. Like not saying like I love my Friday 13th and I love mine, but it's like this is just quality. It's just so smart. Scream is so smart. It's so damn good.
that's like it knows what it's doing, and yet it still is willing to take risk, which
And the
is something.
characters are just nothing like there's no throwaway characters in Scream for the
No,
most part. For
everybody
most of
here,
I have my issues, in some of the sequels, but like
sure.
Scream, it's like you have the acting and the characters, you have people that you like really care about, and you can't say that for most slasher movies. Obviously we'll always care about Laurie Strode, but even some of the Halloween sequels, you can't really say that about a lot of the victims. You know
Oh
what I
no,
mean?
some of them are just cardboard cutouts. I mean, everybody in this film feels like they live in Woodsboro. They feel
Right,
like real people. It's perfect, and you care about them. You care when Tatum dies. Like there's
right,
that investment. And again, that's why I go back to like the original Halloween reference. Like you're with these characters on this particular journey. And I mean, it should be said. I mean, this movie rejuvenated the slasher genre. I mean, that's why we
yeah.
got H2O. It's
The
why we
horror
got
genre was dead in the late
literally. I
'90s, and
mean,
Scream kicked off a whole new subgenre of the '90s to early 2000s slashers, and it's still
it's
you
still
know
going on to
it's
some
still
extent
going.
today. I mean, that's again
I
all
mean, we're
thanks to
getting I Know
Scream.
What You Did Last Summer come back because Scream worked. And
Again,
it's
as a
so
result
funny
of
how we got Scream, the OG, because of Halloween, and after the genre died, and then we got Scream 2022 because Halloween 2018 came
I
back,
know.
and now we're getting like I know what you did last summer because Scream came back. It all comes full circle. I love it. I love it. I'm so hyped.
Everything is connected. No, it's beautiful. No,
Yeah, I mean, it's just
this is a
awesome. I
special
mean,
film.
Halloween is my favorite movie, but Scream is just altogether my favorite franchise. And Scream is right next to Halloween as my favorite movie, Scream and Scream 2. So they're all right. They're all love for both
Hey,
of
you're
these.
in
All
good
love.
company with
Yeah.
those films, so
Yeah.
you can't go wrong with that. No, I mad respect. I mean, that's why I said you are the Scream aficionado. So I'm very happy to defer
This
to
was
you.
fun.
No, honestly, this was a good time. Before we run down the list, just for the hell of it, who is your favorite Ghostface, and obviously Sydney is your favorite
Oh yeah,
character
she's
as
my
well as
favorite character.
Final Girl. But who would be your second favorite character?
Okay, so as far as Ghostface, again, I'll give it to Billy. My top three are Billy, Mickey, and Roman. And
Fair.
it's that criteria specifically because I feel like those three have the most effect on Sydney.
Hmm.
I mean, Billy's the OG, can't really. But number four is Stu, But my top
Sure.
three, are Billy, Mickey, Roman, just because really what they do to my girl Sydney, and obviously I'm a Sydney guy. So yeah, and obviously Sydney Prescott's my favorite character. My second favorite character is Gail Weathers, for sure.
Nice. Nice.
She's a unique kind of final girl. There's no final girl like her, and she doesn't get enough credit because she's always, she's co-leading with, Nev and Sydney, and
Right.
no one compares to her. But she has the most evolution of any character in the entire franchise, and I think she's very underrated. And she's the only one who's in every single movie.
Yeah, that's an accomplishment
Yeah.
there. You can't always say that with horror films, that's for
Yep.
sure. Yeah, for mine, I mentioned it, but Jill would be my number one, Billy for number two, and then
Okay.
Mrs. Loomis for number three.
Hell yeah, I
Yeah,
like that. That's a good lineup right
yeah,
there.
they're pretty solid. Favorite characters, um, I for me, again, I'm not the Sydney guy that you are. I mean, everyone knows
Right.
I hold the torch for Laurie Strode. That's my
Oh yeah,
final girl
100%.
for whatnot. But probably for me, Dewey would be number one. I mean, David Arquette is brilliant in all of those
Yeah,
films,
he's my
and
number three, so I love
he's so
it.
missed. Just as an aside,
Yeah,
it's just so missed. I felt it in Scream Six,
he's
but
the heart and soul, man.
he is.
He's the
No, he
heart and
really
soul.
is. Yeah, for me, it was to be Dewey, and then Gail. I think would be my second favorite.
I love it.
I
Love
love
her.
her arc throughout the series. She really does
Okay.
have a nice story. So yeah,
Okay, so we got our trio covered in
we
these.
got we got it's pretty much the gang's all there.
I love that. All right, awesome.
So give us your ranking one last time.
Okay, it's really hard, guys, because the only flip flop is there's only one that's not in order. So my number six is Scream Six. Number five is Scream 2022, Scream Five. Now number four, Scream Four. My number three, Scream Three. Now here's where I switch it up. My number two is Scream One, Scream 1996, and my number one is Scream Two.
Can't go wrong with that, man. Can't go wrong with that. So just to reiterate, guys, my number six is Scream 5. Number 5 is Scream 6. And number 4 is Scream 3. Number 3 is Scream 2. Number 2 is Scream 4. And number 1, of course, is the OG Scream. So there we have it. We have ranked all of the Screams to date. Uh, there is a seventh film in the
Well,
works,
we will be
so
revisiting this.
the list may change. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But I'm sure I will have you back on the show once that film comes out, and we can certainly talk about more Ghostface. And I'll be curious what your reaction is to the seventh
I
film.
can't wait to have that conversation.
No, I
I'm
don't.
so stoked for
I
seven. I cannot wait.
do you I just as like as a as a fan, do you have any like a wish list for seven, like a location wise, or are you just sort of like surprise me and we'll see what happens?
I don't want any leaks. Like I'm not gonna follow any leak. Like I don't. I hate this leak culture. I hate it so much. So I'm not
Yeah,
trying to
this all
like snoop and find out anything. But I have a feeling we're gonna be going to where Sydney lives now. Obviously, because I do think that she's gonna be full. Like it's not gonna be like a new character and then Sydney. Like it's gonna be Sydney's movie. I have a feeling.
hmm
Obviously, I'm expecting Patrick Dempsey to come back. I'm expecting Courtney Cox to come back. I'm expecting it to be obviously go back to like why legacy matters, and which is really going to be the reverse of like what 5 and 6 were trying to do, like trying to pass it off. But I think we're going to deal with a more mature cast, which will be interesting. Like I think we
Mm.
might deal with someone who like people around more close to Sydney's age, and we're going to be dealing with kids in peril because we found out in 5 she does have kids. So I think that people think that like Sydney isn't scary anymore, Ghostface, but we've never seen Sydney have to try to protect her kids. So I do think we're going to see Sydney in a lot of fear because she has to protect her family now, and that's something different. So I do think that people will go back to the seeing Sydney not just be like, all right, fuck you, I'm bored, let's go. Like we'll have that badass, we'll also have it mixed with the fear, which will bring the tension to like a really, really, really good point, I think. And I'm just down for some like cool like surprise castings. Like who knows what's gonna happen? I think we'll have like younger cast, like teenagers, but I do think it's just going to be like mostly like this is Sydney's story. Um,
Right.
so I'm very excited. I don't know what's going to happen, but I love that it's like Kevin and pretty much Nev at the helm. I think she has a big hand in this, so I cannot wait to see what happens.
That's what it seems. I have to ask you just because it's inevitable that it will come up. Do you think we're going to see Stu again?
Uh, no, I don't. I hope that Nev and Kevin wouldn't let that happen. Listen, I love Matthew Lillard and I love Stu, but he was perfect in the OG, and he died. He was killed. I mean, he was stabbed a lot by Billy, a shit ton of times, and Sydney put the TV on him, and she friggin' like reopened his wounds and put the TV on him. He's dead, and I love when people are so enthusiastic about Stu wanting him back, but this is Scream we're talking about, and it's based in reality, and it would be plot hole central that we didn't know in any other movie that Stu was alive and he just pops up out of nowhere. I mean, come on. Even if he was brought into witness protection or whatever, Sydney Gale's a friggin' investigative journalist. Like we would know that Stu lived. I think it's plot hole central, and I do think it takes away from Sydney's arc in the original because she was able to defeat both of her ghost faces. So I don't it's too hokey and it's too cheesy for them to bring Stu back. If they do it, I will be very unhappy.
I have said like I hope they don't because it does feel
Yeah,
like a cheap trick. If they are going to do it, which I mean at this point nothing will surprise me. I
right,
hope it is something that they put out there rather than trying to spend the next 7 or 8 months saying, "No, he's not in it," just for us to go in
right,
opening night and like, okay, he's like, I'd rather just rip that Band-Aid off than just
right.
try to, play games with it. But we shall see. The time will tell. I hope not, but again, nothing will surprise me these days. But yeah, so there we go, guys. We have ranked the Scream franchise to date. Of course, there was another film on the way, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that as well as other entries in this particular ranking. I'm sure Anthony will. I'll have you back on, and we'll talk maybe some
I would
Scream
love
4
to.
next time. So we'll plan on that. But Anthony, where can people stalk you, so to speak, on social media?
All right, so you can stalk me on Twitter. I'm Anthony Dapuzzo. My last name Dapuzzo. I'm on Instagram at Antapuzzo, and then I do like Phil said, I do a podcast with my buddy Nolan. Never Split Up Pod. You can follow us on all social media, and I'm hoping that this episode does as good for you as your guest spot on our Halloween ranking episode did, because that's one of our best episodes, our best performing episodes ever. So
Oh, there we
I hope
go.
you get the Scream love with this
Well,
one.
there we go, everybody. Come on, all fans of Ghostface, unite for this episode. No, honestly, in all seriousness, a plug for the Never Split Up Pod. You guys are great. Love listening to your show and just your back and forth, your banter. Like you guys really make it that much more enjoyable. Like you clearly
Thank you.
love horror films, but like it's the
We're very different.
camaraderie.
We're
No,
very
that's what
different of
makes it
our
work
taste.
so
Yeah.
well. Like I really appreciate it. So yeah, I definitely keep it up, guys, and I encourage you, fellow listeners, to give it a follow and a subscribe, particularly if you are a fan of horror films, but just looking for a fun, entertaining podcast. I highly recommend you checking it out. But
And check out our Pearl episode. Phil, you guessed on our Pearl episode. That's our most recent episode. Make sure you guys check that out. That was a fun episode leading up to Maxine. So we'll have to have you back on for the Maxine episode as
oh,
well.
looking forward to that. Absolutely, absolutely. But again, guys, all of my social media handles you can find in the show notes. As always, want to thank you for tuning in each week and hearing what I have to say on movies and enjoying this particular ranking episode. It's a bit of a longer one, but we had a good time nevertheless. But that does it for me today, everybody. Take care. I'll be back next week, and we will certainly do this all over again for the love of movies.